Hey everyone, welcome back to Deciding to Love. I am your host, Nathan Holritz. Thanks again for being here. If you haven't already subscribed on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or all three, please do. And please share the show with your friends and with your family. I know that you're likely connected to many people that this show is relevant to. If you don't mind sharing this, I would really appreciate it. And also, if you don't mind leaving a review and or commenting on the show. You can leave reviews on Apple Podcasts, I think on Spotify as well. Of course, you can comment on YouTube and on Spotify, but the engagement, the interaction with the show, preferably positive in nature, would be much appreciated. Thanks in advance for that. Today's conversation is with Field and Karie, a very open, raw, honest conversation about the depths of their relationship. I so appreciate them being willing to share the way that they did. I know that this conversation really resonated with me, and I hope that you're able to take a lot away from it as well. I will make one last request, and that is if you or somebody that you know would be a good fit for the show, you've been in a long-term romantic relationship of 10 years or more, don't have to be married, just committed relationship of 10 years or more, you're still excited about each other, about the relationship, and you'd be willing to share with myself and our audience how you've been able to create that dynamic in your long-term romantic relationship, I'd love to have you on the show. So if you go to decidingtolove.com, click on share your story, you can apply to be on the show, and I will be in touch with you soon. All right, without further ado, here's today's conversation with Field and Karie. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Deciding to Love. I'm your host, Nathan Holritz, and it is an absolute privilege to have Karie and Field on the show with us today. Guys, thank you so much, not only for the great conversation before we started recording, but for being on the show with us today. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, we're super excited. And when it came through that you were looking for people, it was like, of course we'll talk to Nathan about anything.
Yeah, what really happened is I saw it, I immediately signed us up, and then Carrie's like, oh, okay. You signed us up for that? I was like, yeah.
Well, I know that we talked a little bit about this before we started recording, and you guys don't mind me kind of giving a little bit of hints anyway as to our previous connection. But I have to say that very similarly, when I saw that you applied to be on the show, and I'm just thinking about the fact that we were going to actually get to have a chance for a conversation today. We've had such wonderful conversation over the years. For those of you listening and who don't have the context, I know Karie and Field from the photography industry, and we've had such wonderful conversation over the years. You guys are some of the few people that I've had the opportunity to interact with truly over the last 20 plus years, where when I'm having conversation with you, I don't feel like there's this weird fake layer that I have to sort through or push through to get to the real stuff. Mm-hmm. There's a level of genuineness that I've had the opportunity to experience in conversation with both of you. And so the idea that we would be able to talk about your relationship, I knew this would be absolutely perfect because we'll actually go deep and it'll be very real. And that's, I think where the biggest benefit lies in the context of a conversation around romantic relationships. There's plenty of, little tidbit bullet point tips and tricks for romantic relationship kind of content all over the internet. But I think where the real benefit lies is in the willingness in conversation to go really deep, to be transparent, to share struggles, and then the lessons learned from those struggles. I think we can all grow and learn as a result of that type of conversation. So yeah, the idea that I get to talk with you guys about this, I think is absolutely perfect. Thank you so much.
Of course.
Yeah, we're excited to dive in. And yes, like you said, we are pretty open. Yeah. We don't have conversations like this often. We used to a lot more when we, photographed weddings. Obviously, you'd have, couples conversations, and people would ask us like, oh, how do you have a successful marriage? What do you do? And that kind of gave us an opportunity to speak into those things, but we don't really have that group of people anymore.
My experience on the other side of you guys, not only at the industry, various industry events, I think we did, I don't know, at least one or two, maybe podcast interviews at some point. And I even had the wonderful privilege, and truly it was wonderful privilege to stay at your home at one point and get to see you guys in real life and with your kids. The thing about you all is not only that you're willing to go deep, but there's not some pretense that you're trying to keep about the relationship being perfect. Like it is raw even in some ways that I've had the opportunity to observe. but ultimately there's just a sense of depth to it. As I observe you guys, of course, it's just from the outside in. You can tell me otherwise, but there's certainly like a baseline level of comfort with each other. Certainly love, I should say, even below that, but then a comfort level with each other. And I think that sense of like, hey, we're in this together. Yes, we run into these challenges. Yes, there's going to be conflict. Yes, there's going to be frustration. But at the end of the day, we've got each other. We've got each other's back. And that enables, that kind of baseline enables the kind of relationship that we're even trying to ultimately develop and talk about, certainly here on the show. And so I have to give you guys props for that. And we're going to get into conversation and learn a little bit more about how you've created that dynamic today. And maybe we can start, as I like to do here, by just talking briefly about the backstory. I like to hear about how people met. Like, what was that first experience getting to connect with each other? How did you guys connect?
Yeah, we can kind of do this together, but it's funny. So I moved to Arizona when I was just about to turn 12. So it was right in that, whatever, that 6th grade time period. But Karie actually moved to the same junior high school that I was at in 8th grade. And so I immediately knew who Karie was, because like a lot of the guys I knew were like, oh, did you see Karie Michaels and this and that and blah, blah, blah. Like a lot of people knew her and all of that. And so like I knew of her, but we actually didn't have any classes together. As Karie likes to say, she was in the smart classes. I went back and forth year after year going between like honors classes and not honors classes. So we actually didn't have any classes together. We were in the same school together until, all throughout high school, but we were set up actually. I went to my best friend at the time. I went to his birthday party, and I was the only one there. And then his girlfriend at the time showed up with Karie. And so it was one of those things, like we were set up at my friend's birthday party. It's the weirdest, like who has a birthday party and only invites one friend
And who sets people up at 16?
Right. So yeah, we were 16. I was actually dating somebody at the time, but we hung out. It was like we hung out in the pool, and Karie was super conservative. She wore like a t-shirt over her swimsuit, which was just mean. Yeah. But yeah, so it
that's kind of where it started. We didn't start dating right away. We just were basically at that point on each other's radar. Like, oh yeah, he's a nice guy. And then
she couldn't stop flirting with me.
And then I ended up going out on some other like dates with guys, and that friend called me and was like, hey, guess who wants to go on a date with you? And I was like, who? And he's like, Field Denny. And I was like, oh, okay, like I'll go on a date with Field Denny. And so went on our first date at 16, started dating right before our senior year. And the rest is history.
Tell him what you told your mom.
Oh, I did. After our first date, I did tell my mom that I met the man I was going to marry.
Whoa, no way. Okay, so this is wonderful. What was the thing that made you say that? Like, what was the intuition?
I think it was just like his personality. I was like very attracted to how, like, even as a teenage guy, he was like super caring and compassionate about other people. Like you could tell that like he was somebody that really cared about somebody else's feelings, even just in the short time that we hung out. And didn't help that he was super, cute and was a lifeguard and had a nice tan and some abs. But really,
6-pack and chest hair.
But really, it was just his personality. Like if anybody who's met Field knows that like he just like lights up a room. He's the kind of person that like everyone's drawn to. And so it was hard not to be like super, attracted to that and be like, I think this is my person. But obviously you think those things when you're young, and sometimes it doesn't work out, but it worked out for us.
I've got to ask Field. Karie talks about the fact that you were that loving, caring persona even back then, which is really fascinating to me. I've had firsthand experience over the years getting to see that. You were heading up a photography community years ago, and not only a sense of leadership, but ultimately a leadership rooted in a depth of caring and kindness for other people. And, I don't know if it's very often that a kid, a teenager, has already begun to develop this very strong personality trait that is like unusual in the best way possible and actually carries through into adulthood. Do you think it's something about the way that you were raised? What's at the root of that heart of yours?
I think that's, I've never really thought about it. I just a big part of it comes from I just genuinely want everybody to be happy. There's not some like I don't know if it goes a lot deeper than that, but I genuinely want everybody to feel welcome and happy and a part of whatever is going on. And so I think that's probably the underlying aspect of it is I genuinely just want people to be happy. And so like I joke a lot and I've my dad was really quick-witted, and I feel like I'm pretty quick-witted. Like I get that from my dad. And so I joke around a lot. Like I say things I'm pretty quick to the draw to like try and lighten the mood and whatever, but which we'll actually get into later. Wasn't always the best thing for a relationship. But yeah, no, I think that a lot of it honestly just comes from that. I don't think that it was necessarily anything to do with my raising. I mean, my dad's a really hardworking guy, but growing up, I never saw him as like this happy-go-lucky guy or anything like that. Like he's not that type, and my mom also isn't that way. They're very kind and considerate, um, and they're very generous. But it wasn't that same way. I'm kind of unique in our family.
Well, and I think too, like for Field, if you even like talk to anybody that knew Field as a child, they'd say the same thing. Like he was just like, even in his small town in Nebraska, like everybody knew Field, everybody loved Field, everybody wanted to hang out with Field. People there named their kids Field because he like made such an impact, like just being a kid growing up there. So like I think it's just who he's been always, has been this like very magnetic, caring, loving person.
Well, it was a very small town. It was pretty, there's like 1,300 people. It's pretty easy to get to know to get to know a lot of people.
Well, I've got to ask, I'm curious here, and I'll be the first to own that I may be projecting on the situation. I certainly can't claim to be anywhere near the depth of just genuine warmth that I've experienced being on the other side of you, Field. But I do know when you talk about the idea of always wanting people to be happy, I know that tendency, speaking for myself anyway, um, I know that tendency can, especially in the context of a romantic relationship, can lead to codependent behavior. And it can also potentially get in the way of the necessary honesty sometimes in order to get to the root of a potential problem in the relationship. Because if we're always dancing around not wanting to hurt somebody or upset somebody or just kind of upset the apple cart, to use the old phrase, it can potentially be detrimental to a relationship. Have you found that that's been an issue for you, or have you been able to figure out ways to avoid any of those tendencies?
Well, I think early on, we've been together for 27 years or something like that. Like early on in our relationship, like I said, talking about like the quick-witted thing, I would make quips or jokes or something that I honestly didn't know would make Carrie feel a certain way. She would feel unloved, or she would feel it'd be upset, or like but like so I would do that early on, and I didn't know at the time that it affected her, but I learned later through some conversations that we'd have that kind of stuff did bother her, and so I immediately stopped, or tried to immediately stop. But I don't necessarily think that me wanting her to always be happy led me to lies, or led me to
Like codependent.
led me to codependent. Yeah, I don't think it did. I think more along the lines of of wanting her to be happy. Um, it was probably more just me wanting to do stuff for her, uh, and be appreciative for the things that she would do for me. And luckily, one of Carrie's love languages, if you follow the love languages, is is
Acts of
acts of
service.
service. And so like, if I would do something nice for her, it always worked out in my favor. But it was always just with the guise of like trying to make her happy.
Well, I appreciate you sharing that. And I want to actually get to some of the things that you guys shared with me. And I want to start with, and for those of you who've been listening to the show, or for that matter, for those who haven't been listening to the show, these first few episodes, what I do is send just a few, or I present a few simple questions to our guests that are coming on the show, a couple of them. And the kind of the primary one centers around 2 or 3 big ideas, principles, lessons learned in the context of the relationship that's enabled them to create this dynamic where they actually still enjoy being with each other after, a period of time, at least 10 years. And y'all's case, 27, 28 years. And so the first thing that you talked about, or that you started with when I asked you this, is 2 words: love and respect. And I mean, we could spend hours and hours and hours on each of these as their own individual topic. They're very loaded. But I've got a bit of I want to start with just kind of a personal take here, which is that we use the word love in so many different contexts in our society and our culture. And unfortunately, I think as a result, it really waters down the word. I think it's also a bit weird because there's no objective, like you don't go to Webster's and look up the word love and find this very clear definition of what it actually means. There's probably 3, 4, 5, 6 different definitions, even in the dictionary. So I'm curious for you guys, first of all, when we talk about this idea of love, what does that word love mean in the context of your relationship? Could you maybe even sum it up in a sentence?
Yeah, we talked about this last night together, and I do think, that the word love just gets thrown around a lot. And it's such an easy thing to just use. And I remember like even now, we have adult kids, but like when they were in high school and they were in a relationship and they were like, I love this person. And I was just like, oh, okay. Like, do you even know what love is? And I mean, like obviously it's hard to, question that because I felt love for Field when we were in high school. But when you're in a relationship for a really long time, love really does tend to take a different meaning. And so we both thought last night, like when we talked about it, that if we could sum it up in one sentence, love is the intentional act of caring for another person. That's their feelings, that's
Yeah.
their physical needs, that's, emotions, everything. Not that they necessarily come before you, but that they are equal to you and that you prioritize them just as much as you would yourself.
Yeah.
And that's
Yeah, because I feel like a lot of times the commercial aspect of love is like, oh, I put you before me, or like I would do anything for you. And in reality, that's an unrealistic take, to say like, no, I'm gonna put somebody else completely ahead of my needs. Now there are things that I would do as a husband, like I would die for Carrie. Like that's one of the roles, right? Like that's one of those things. Like you would put yourself completely ahead of this other, or you would put them, their well being ahead of yours completely. But there's this like, oh, I would do anything for you, or and it's just not. It's not
realistic.
realistic. But what is realistic is that I genuinely, deeply care for your emotional and physical well being, and that I will do whatever I can to make sure that physically you're okay and that emotionally you're okay. And
Yeah. And that those decisions are made on a daily, minute, hourly basis. It's so different than like, you have to literally wake up every day and choose to love somebody.
you have to work on it
Yeah.
because we're all very selfish.
Yeah. Innately we're selfish
No,
people.
and like you mature through it, and like your love matures and all that. And I didn't understand that when I was younger, but now I definitely get it. Like when I was young, I was extremely selfish. Like even when I would, try and make sure other people were happy or whatever, like I didn't know I was selfish. But you come to the realization like, oh shoot, like I'm really selfish. I'm playing video games while Carrie is taking care of 2 newborns and, and making dinner and whatever. Like, oh, I suck. Like I would, it's not intentional. Literally, you don't think about it when you're being selfish. That's kind of the point. Um, but when you realize, like, oh, shoot, like, I should care more about putting this person's needs ahead of, like, not even ahead of mine, just like, I should care more about their needs, like what really they're experiencing on a day-to-day basis, and how can I improve that? And it's unbelievably simple, and it's stupid how simple it is. But you generally just see them needing help with something, or checking in on them and just making sure that they have what they need. And the relationship kind of takes care of itself from that point forward.
I very much agree with you guys, pretty much on all these points. And I want to break this down just a little bit, but just to follow up immediately on what you were just saying, Field, it's simple in that conceptually, like there are very few moving parts involved in the idea of just making this choice, consistently making this choice to care for somebody else, to take care of them in one form or another, physically, emotionally, or otherwise. The thing that, especially being outside of a committed relationship at this point, being single, if you will, and being somewhat jealous of people like yourselves who get to be in this relationship, imperfect as it may be, you at least have this amazing privilege and opportunity to be in this relationship with each other and to do life together. The couples who I observe, unlike yourselves, who seem to just kind of endlessly find one reason or another, to question the relationship or to question each other, not question each other, but be frustrated or annoyed with each other just constantly, rather than shifting that mindset to intentionally, as you said, and I love that word, intentionally, consistently choosing to love the other person, and doing so, by the way, because you happen to like them. To me, that doesn't seem so complicated. And by the way, to be clear and to be fair, I've been very guilty in years past of not having that mindset. But I think at the end of the day, it is relatively simple. And we may not always, quote, feel like it. You know, in this culture that's so obsessed with how we feel and letting our feelings drive action or not, we have to be better than that. We have to move beyond that via this intention or this decision, the theme of the show, to love that person day in and day out. And I love that you remind us all of that. Just a quick follow-up to that before we move to respect, though. Was this a mindset that you just kind of naturally had at the outset of the relationship, or was there maybe a turning point in the relationship where you learned that you needed to be more intentional day in and day out?
Yeah, so I think Field and I are both really naturally, we're very loving people. We care about other
Hmm.
people's feelings, so like our personalities tend to work well for that. I do think that as you grow and learn more and more about somebody in a relationship, you really have to, like, look, relationships, they can be, uh, there's a million different scenarios, right? But I think what it ultimately comes down to is two paths that you can take. You can either choose to care solely about yourself and what your needs are, and that causes lots of turmoil and problems, or you can choose to look at the person you're in a relationship with, and even if they're not being wonderful, you can say, at the core of who this person is, are they a good person? Do they love me? And then you literally have to lead by example. Now, there's been times in mine and Field's relationship where we swap those roles. Maybe I'm being selfish, maybe he's being selfish,
It's usually me.
and we just and we just have to get back on that track. Like, I absolutely know that Field is at his core a good and kind and loving person, and he doesn't mean to be hurting me right now. And that moment is so different if you take the stance of, this person's hurting me, I am going to act negatively towards them because of it. It's such a completely different mindset, and it's literally, it seems so simple, but those are your two options at that point, because you're either in self-defense mode or you're in, I'm going to, I don't want to make it sound like high and mighty, but like, I am going to take the higher road because I know this person is a good person, and I'm going to apologize, even if it's not my fault. I'm going to make the effort here. And obviously, like, you fail at these things sometimes, but if your intention most of the time is on that other path, then it really can help you understand who a person is
Yeah.
and how to communicate better with them, how to make the relationship better.
Yeah. And I think something you said there, like, oh, even if it's not my fault, like what something that Karie has always done that makes me feel just like, as we move into the respect thing, is like she's always been really good about saying like, hey, this, whatever, if there is a problem, like, hey, this is kind of where this was the problem. Like we'll talk about one that happened, but this is the problem. Here's how I felt. I'm sorry that, you know, I did this or I said this. I didn't mean to disrespect you. Or I didn't mean to upset you. Like, but here's where we are. It's that thing like, hey, nothing is 100% one person's fault in a relationship. That's just not how it works. Like there are two people who are trying to who have to try and make this thing work and you have to hold each other accountable, but you also have to hold yourself accountable. Like, no, if I screw up and then Karie does something that hacks me off, like I still screwed up. Like I still did something that I need to apologize for, regardless of how I feel about the way that she probably justly reacted to my screw up. Like there are just things like, no, there's always, and she does this so well, is she always says like, hey, I'm really sorry for this. And it's not, I'm sorry that we're having this problem, or I'm sorry that, there's this situation. It's literally like, hey, for my side of this, I'm sorry. Like I didn't mean to do this. And then, one of us is always the first to kind of do that, and it always softens the blow. And it's like, I'm really sorry too. Like I didn't mean to make you feel that way. I didn't mean to react so angry. When I was younger, I used to get real angry. I think Karie said I've raised my voice at her once. I don't believe that. I don't think that's ever happened. And I think at the core, it's that we both realize like, this is somebody who is a kind, genuine person who has my best interest at heart, or who has my feelings, who's always taking my feelings into consideration too. And you just remind yourself of that. And it's real easy to say, I'm sorry.
As you're describing that, and Karie, your commentary earlier, the word trust comes to mind. Like there's an underlying trust that this person, to your point that you were making, Karie, earlier, loves you. And yeah, they may be acting out right now, and maybe the best version of them isn't coming out, but you trust the bigger picture, which is that you both committed to love each other. You know that person behind whatever the outburst in the moment, and you trust and ultimately give them the benefit of the doubt. And I appreciate you guys leading by example, but I want to get to the topic of respect. And very similar to the word love, I'd like to understand how you all define that notion of respect in the context of your relationship. And maybe I don't know if it's different for each of you, or for you both have a similar kind of definition for that word, but what does that mean to you?
That one's a little harder for me. I mean, look, we could get into stuff that could really upset people about patriarchy and all this other stuff, but like honestly, as a guy, as the husband and somebody, we have kids, we have, all of this. Like it's not my way or the highway. But in many instances, if there is something that, especially early on, it was an issue with some of the discipline that we would do for the kids. Like, I remember one time I took away their Star Wars toys for a week or something like that. And they were really small kids. And Karie's like, that's just way too long, like you can't do that. That's way too long. It doesn't, it's not the point of the punishment or whatever. And basically, like if I would set a rule in the house, or I would set a punishment, or I would ask the kids to do something, if Karie, like in the moment, disagreed with me in front of the kids or something like that, I would feel super disrespected. And it's not even, I honestly, I don't know how to define respect when it comes to a relationship. I just know what it feels like, and so we would have those conversations early on, like, hey, when you do this in front of the kids, like, I feel so unbelievably disrespected, and then I get angrier, you know, or like if I'm already angry at a situation and then, you know, you tell me to calm down or you tell me it's not a big deal or something like that, like I get even angrier. And it's not, and it is a respect thing because look, I'm at this level because I feel it is this way. Right. And being in today's society, feelings are important, right? But it's like, I feel that I am justified in my anger. I feel that I'm justified in this response. And so we need to have a better way of communicating when you, when you think I'm wrong, you know, when you think that this isn't right and it needs to be done.
Yeah, and for us, that's later, that's privately, that's because those are the things that we have found, like, even if you look at, our early on in our relationship when we were just in our 20s compared to where we are now in our 40s, it's like even just to be out with friends and family and make some like off comment about something,
It's me making the off comment about
no, no, I would do it too. I really would do it too. There would be times where, so I grew up in a very loving mom and dad family, but my extended family, there are a lot of single women and they are very upset with men and they don't have a lot of respect for men. They've been really disappointed by men in their life. And so I kind of grew up around this culture of like, men do bad things and men are often the problem and in that same vein, I heard a lot of disrespectful things said about men all the time. And so for me, sometimes and early on in our relationship, I would make off comments and then Field would bring it up later and I would just be like, oh, I didn't know that was a big deal, but it disrespected him. And I just I wasn't aware of it because I thought it was kind of normal. um, but just the fact that he could communicate that with me and I could make those adjustments. And I think that people that do that, because if I look back or if I even look at examples that I've had in the past, like, it's wrong. You know that it doesn't make you feel good to say those things about another person, whether or not they're right or wrong. And just having that awareness of like, yeah, that's only serving me and it's not even serving me in a good way. It's just temporarily, you know, fixing something that I think I need to fix or whatever. But and then later on in our life, we've come to a place where we don't have that problem as much with respect, but every once in a while it does come up. It's often around children because that is a tricky area. And sometimes we have different viewpoints on how we should be parenting, even semi adult children. And so just remembering those boundaries of like, this is a private conversation. This is something that we talk about, not around the kids, not around other people in general, and just honoring the fact that I do respect my husband enough to not make it something that we talk about in front of other people because we all know, we've all seen it. When you're out in public and you see a couple talking poorly to each other or talking poorly about their spouse, it is so horrible to witness. And I think pretty early on in our relationship, we would see stuff like that and we would just be like, yeah, we never want to be those people. Like, let's make sure we don't do things like that. It made us very aware of other couples and how they spoke about their significant others.
And to that point, like it made us realize, you know, I used to travel a lot. 'Cause I was in the photography industry. I'd go to lots of conferences. I'd go by myself, and these conferences would all be, you know, 20 to 34-year-old women and this and that. But like, I made sure that I was always like every conference that I went to, everywhere, everybody knew that I was happily married. You know, like if you know one thing about Field Denny, like he's happily married, like no matter where I would go. And it's a respect thing to my wife. Like she knows she can trust me. She knows that I'm going to go out there. She used to get annoyed because people would run up to her and be like, oh my gosh, your husband loves you so much and this and that. And it's like, but to me, I'm doing my job. You know, to me, it's like, no, I did my job. Like, I went out there and I showed that I love my wife, I respect my wife, but it goes deeper than that because a big thing about respect is the narrative that you have about your spouse. Right? Like, going back to, I truly believe that they're a kind and genuine person. Like, the things that you think about yourself, or about yourself as well, but about your spouse manifest into reality. And so, like, I always try and appreciate all the things that she does for me on a daily basis. But also, like, when I'm talking about my wife or when I'm thinking about my wife, like, I am intentionally thinking the best things about her at all times. She may not be as great as I think she is, but oh my God, I think she is the most amazing human on the planet. Like,
I'm so great.
you're so great. But like, honestly, in my head, that's who you are. That's who she is. It's that she is this loving, caring, wonderful wife. And she's a good mom and she does everything she does, she's good at. It's really annoying. But like the narrative that you build up about your spouse, it's just crucial to how you interact with them on a daily basis. But it is crucial to how you represent your marriage.
Yeah, and how you speak about
How
them.
you speak about it is unbelievably powerful.
Yeah.
Do you think we could interchange? I was thinking about the definition of the word respect. First of all, just to kind of set a baseline here, for anybody who's not familiar, if you go to decidingtolove.com and click on the link there that says pillars, there are some kind of big ideas that I want to make a theme on the show where we intentionally discuss these pillars at one point or another, these big ideas that I think need more in-depth, honest discussion in our culture as it relates to romantic relationships. And I think part of the significance of maybe the discussion around at least some of those words is actually creating clear definitions for those words. Because a lot of times, especially when it comes to touchy topics of one form or another, I think about, the last 4, 5, 6 years in our, at least the American culture, where the topic of racism has been an even bigger one maybe than ever, and appropriately so. But I think it there were a lot of unnecessary problems and conflict and stress caused as a result of there not being a very clear definition of the word racism. And while I realize that's a kind of far removed from the topic of romantic relationships, I think it's a great example of the importance of being clear about what a word means. And especially in the context of romantic relationships where, if we're going to say something to somebody or our partner says something to us and they're talking about what is important to them and they use one word or another, understanding what it is that they mean by that word and that the definition isn't lost in the process through this kind of subjective preferential definition, that we actually both collectively understand what it is that we're talking about. I think it's really important. I mean, it goes without saying that good communication needs to be prioritized in the context of a relationship. But what I don't think is discussed enough is the importance of actually maybe defining certain words very, very specifically so that we're both clear about what that means to us. We talked about love and the potential, at least subjective definition for you all about what that means in the context of your relationship. And respect, I don't know what the dictionary definition of the word respect is, but as you're describing, and Field, you said the word appreciate there toward the end of the bit that you were commenting. And I think about the word value here. If somebody feels respected or not, do you think that they effectively feel valued or devalued? Would that be a good way to define that, especially in the context of what you're talking about in your relationship?
I think in some cases, yes, the word value is interchangeable there, or the feeling of being valued. In not in every case though. Like in the case of like setting rules or setting boundaries or whatever, and how, if one of us sets a rule or sets a boundary or asks a kid to do something or whatever, we don't go against each other, even if we think it's a little much or not enough or whatever. Like we every now and then Carrie and I would get into this on like little stupid things like curfews for the kids. It's like, oh, I want the kid home by 9:30, and Carrie's like, "Oh, I told him 10:30." And it's like, "Okay, well then it's 10:30." Like that's just the way it goes. If I ask one of the kids like, "Hey, make sure you're home by 9." And Carrie's like, oh, I told him to just be home by 10. It's like, well, please just make sure you're home by 10. Like it's that simple that I'm not going against, I'm not going against her. I want to show respect for her judgment, for the things that she chooses for us and for our family. And that's a respect thing. It's not necessarily a value aspect to where, oh, her opinion on this is valued, so I'm going to agree with it. It's more she set an expectation, and that should be met because out of respect, it's the expectation that she wants. Right. And so, and I have a tendency as the dad and the authority and whatever to have higher, not higher expectations. That's completely wrong, but to have a stricter expectation
Yeah.
for my kids. That is much more accurate. It's not higher. It's definitely stricter. And it's not always right. I am very thankful that our kids have Carrie, who is not nearly as strict as I am, even though like I think that me being strict is a very good thing. Like, yeah, no, if I tell you to be home at 9, I firmly believe that it's best that you're home at 9. But at the same time, like when I appreciate that Carrie's there to say 10, 10:30 or whatever that is. And that's obviously it seems like a silly example, but that's the example that comes up on a regular basis. Those are those small little things that do impact your relationship because they eat at you if you choose to let it eat at you. I could just as easily be like, no, that's ridiculous. Like I want them home at 9. They need to be home at 9. And I could feel justified in that because I am the authority or the authoritative figure in the household. But it's so disrespectful to my wife and to my kid's mother to be like, no, she's wrong. Like, be home at 9. But those are the examples that happen day in and day out. And it's just, you have to choose to respect your partner and respect their judgment and say like, yes, no, that's fine. Every time I tell the kids like, I'm sorry, I didn't know your mom told you could be home later. Yes, please just be home at the time that she said. Like, so I don't think it's
Yeah,
valued.
of course, I'm sure our kids have figured out that mom gives a later time. So always just ask mom.
Which once again, I am happy. I'm thankful that they have that. They should have this dynamic of this is who my dad is, this is who my mom is.
But
Like,
100%, if they were to say like, hey, dad asked us to be home at 9, can we be home later? I would say, nope, your dad said be home at 9.
Yeah.
So you can be home at 9. Like, that's not how this is going to go. But because just like he's saying, like, I respect him enough to enforce what he thought was the expectation.
yeah. And they have played us before
Oh, they definitely.
where they ask me and I say something and then they just go and ask Carrie and then she says something else. And then they'll come out to me and be like, oh, well, mom said I could be home at 10. And I'd be like, oh, did she? Like, when did she say that? Because I had already told you 9. You agreed to that. And so at that point, it's not, I'm mad at Carrie, because she said a later time. It's like, well, yeah, I'm sure she did say that. That's very kind of her. But I told you this, and then Carrie will come out and be like, you asked me after you asked your dad? Like, no, we know that's not okay. Like, she doesn't let the kids play us against each other, pit us against each other. And so, like, that's a respect thing. It's hard to define.
Respect is hard to define. And I do think it's different for men and women because it's not very often in my life I've felt quote unquote disrespected. I tend to feel more hurt and upset and unloved by something that happens, not necessarily disrespected. So that one's a little trickier as a female, I think. I don't think it carries as much weight for me anyways, for my who I am, my personality. It doesn't carry the same weight as feeling unloved.
Yeah, and I
Or
almost
hurt.
never feel unloved.
Yeah.
But I will feel disrespected.
I know that there was, in fact, one of my guests just recently brought up the book Love and Respect.
Yeah,
Is that
Emerson.
a book that,
I love that
yeah,
book.
is that a book that, okay, so you do recommend it?
Yeah, we would give it to our wedding clients. Like it
Mhm.
had a huge impact on our relationship. We were in a church small group, and we were going through this, and it came up like, oh, hey, we could do this study on love and respect, and you go through this workbook. And I remember you do like a before and after, like on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate your marriage? And I was like, it's a 7 because I suck, like I know I can do better. Like it's a 7 out of 10, but 7 out of 10 is good. And I think Karie put like a 9 or something. And I saw the score that she put, and I was just so unbelievably thankful for that. But like going through that, that workbook, it really did help us learn to better communicate.
Yeah, it really helped us communicate better.
Like we were already on a pretty good path. We were doing pretty well. But that book, that's really kind of when I started to realize the impact of some of my jokes and the impact of some of the things that I would say offhand that were just to try and make somebody laugh. To where I was like, oh, like I shouldn't criticize slightly burnt grilled cheese or something stupid, that's just like, she did this out of love. Like this shouldn't be something that gets joked about.
Sure. Fair enough. Well, we'll link to both Love and Respect, and you guys mentioned 5 Love Languages earlier. We'll link to both those books in the show notes for any of you listening in who haven't read or listened to those books yet. I want to respect you all's time, and certainly our audiences as well. So I want to keep us moving. We've got a couple more points just to get into. And I know we could easily spend, just because of our dynamic, but also because these are loaded topics, another 3 or 4 hours. We're not going to do that. But the next point that you made is another one of those topics that, from my personal experience, I think is just so valuable. And not just from my personal experience, but certainly observing kind of the world at large and relationship culture. You said any lie, no matter how big or small, destroys trust. And I mean, I do love this. It's a concept not talked about enough, but has this always been the standard for you all? Or is this also something that you, like, over time you learned you needed to place more priority or significance on?
It's definitely something that we learned over time. One of the things that lies do is they not only destroy trust, but they destroy intimacy. Like the ability to actually tell the truth to your partner about absolutely everything. That's what being intimate is really about. And that emotional intimacy bleeds into physical intimacy. Like it just has such an impact on your relationship health, to where it got to the point, and we tried to raise our kids this way, and they do pretty well, where it's never worth it to lie, regardless what it is about. If you feel ashamed about something you did and you want to lie, or if you're embarrassed, or if you're afraid of hurting somebody's feelings, just tell the truth. Like, honestly, it's so, it's such an important part about having a relationship that can stand anything. Because whether you're going to go through hell as a couple, whether it's something you do
Internal
or external, there's just going to be factors in your life that you have zero control over, that you're going to need the intimacy. You're going to need the trust of your partner. And so, like, even the smallest lies can just absolutely destroy your relationship. They can destroy the intimacy, and then it's hard to build back up because you've hurt some.
Field, you said that honesty enables trust, which enables intimacy, which basically sums up the episode that I did on this very topic. I think it's just so absolutely vital. And at least my perspective, y'all tell me what you think, even down to, and I'm glad that you brought this up, even down to the so-called white lies that our culture kind of widely accepts as just normal existence, whether in the context of romantic relationships or otherwise. I think that even those so-called white lies or small lies, air quotes, can, if you know that the other person is okay with that behavior, then whether it's conscious or not, there's this natural distrust that happens internally, because you never know if that person's telling you the complete truth. And if they can tell a half truth about this thing, well, are they telling a half truth about this thing or that thing? What might they be hiding about this topic? What do you think enables couples, yourselves included, to be honest in the moment for the sake of maintaining that baseline of absolute honesty at all times?
I think it took obviously some real conversations, but we did a marriage retreat a while back that's no longer a thing, but we did it, I think, back to back years. And one of the things that they encouraged was to kind of go back and have some uncomfortable conversations. And I think that we were really able to do that because of the what Carrie had talked about earlier. Is we truly believe the other person is a kind, genuine person who wants what's best for us. Like you're not going to everybody's going to do something wrong. Everybody's going to do something that they're ashamed of. Everybody's going to do one of these things. And it's if you are with somebody that says, like, hey, like, I'm here for you. We can talk through these problems. We can talk through whatever. Then you can really have those uncomfortable conversations. So, I mean, we had like, hey, we're both sitting here crying conversations because one of us feels ashamed or one of us feels like we're breaking the other person's heart, or which doesn't happen, but like you feel like you're destroying something by having these open conversations about problems or about lies or about deception, when in reality you're not destroying anything. In reality you're building a better, more intimate relationship. So I think we had that. We didn't I definitely didn't know that at the time, but at the time I was just like, here we go. We have to have these conversations. We have to talk about we have to talk about the terrible things. Like let's dive right into it and talk about the way that we're feeling, or the way that, something that I did or something that Carrie did that we're ashamed of, or that we're worried is going to hurt the other person, whether it be, emotionally, or, a financial mistake or an emotional mistake or whatever. It's just, these are the conversations that need to happen. So I think just knowing that no matter what I said, she was going to still love me, and that she may be upset, but that she was still going to love me and care for me and not make me feel worse than I already feel. Like that's because going back to the little white lies, like we don't tell each other little white lies either. Like we were talking about this last night, and it can be as simple as she asked me to, put away the laundry and move laundry from the washer to the dryer, like something stupid, but whatever. I'm playing video games. She asked me to do it. She leaves. She could call me,
There
and
seems
while
to be a
she's out,
theme here, Field. You and playing video games.
I love video games. 'Cause she could call me while she's out and be like, "Oh, did you do that?" And I could easily say yes, and then just go do it before, and know that, oh, it's going to be done before she gets home. I'll just tell her yes. Like, of course I did that. Of course I remembered. I'm the perfect husband. Like, I could just say yes and go do that, and she would never know. Or I can just say, oh, shoot, no, I forgot. I got distracted. I was on X, or I was playing video games. I'm sorry. I'm going to go do that right now. And then I can literally just get up, go do it right now, know that she's not thinking, gosh, Field's such a jerk. Like, why didn't he do it when I asked him to? And know that, hey, it still got done. Like, it's still done. And then I don't have that feeling of, I just lied to my wife over something stupid. And then I feel bad about myself. Like, it destroys the intimacy on my part. Like, shoot, I messed up. Like, I feel bad. I lied to my wife. And then she gets home and I have to like walk on eggshells, hoping she doesn't find out that I told this stupid, insignificant lie. Like, it's just not worth it. Just own up to it. Just, yeah, I suck. I forgot to do that. But thanks for the reminder.
There were, I'm sure I know times earlier on in our relationship, in our marriage, that there would be little lies, and we would, you never forget about them, though, is the thing. Like, those things always come back up, no matter how small they are, no matter how maybe insignificant you think it is at the time to tell a lie. Like, those things just kind of, you carry those and they brew, and they end up becoming a bigger problem down the road, because you then are carrying, not only are you afraid of how somebody is going to react, but then you're carrying guilt and shame, and
Mm.
and those types of feelings lead to problems with intimacy and honesty, um and that kind of stuff. So I definitely think that just having a baseline of like, we're going to be open and honest with each other, no matter how bad the other one might feel when we say these things. And that's just something that we kind of really early on in our marriage, I'd say probably year like what, maybe 5, 6, that we really were able to get a better handle on, that like these little things do matter. These little lies do matter, whether it's I bought this and I'm not going to say anything, like even though I know we're on a tight budget, whatever, like we're just going to hide this.
I have a secret credit card.
Yeah, but all those wait, I didn't have a secret credit card. But yeah, just making sure that those types of things really just didn't have any space in our life. Like we had just gotten to a place, obviously you kind of in a marriage you hit lows, and in those lows when you're trying to unpack everything, you realize how significant little lies and misleading things have created an environment that's just not healthy. And so you either move on and grow from that and you do better, knowing that eventually one of you will fail again, but like you at least have the tools to say like, we know how to do this. It's uncomfortable. We've done it before. We can do it again. And, it's kind of like a budget meeting, you don't want to have it. I don't want to talk to my spouse about money, but like, here we go. And it's the same thing with, little lies or problems with intimacy or things like that. You just have to have those conversations.
Well, at the end of the day, when we can trust that the other person is on our team, at least I'll speak subjectively here, but from my experience anyway, if I know, yes, it may create a little bit of upset in the moment, but at the end of the day, I know that this person on the other side of me is on my side. They're on my team. They've got my back. And of course, underlying all of that is love. Then it's way easier for me to be open and honest and vulnerable and transparent and know that, yeah, maybe I'm getting into a little bit of a temporarily uncomfortable conversation here, because bigger picture, the relationship is good. Bigger picture, this person's got my back. And it seems like you all have created that dynamic in your relationship. Field, earlier you alluded to this idea of uncomfortable conversations, and I think it's very much related, and it was actually kind of the last big idea that you shared with me, but it's very much related to this topic at hand. Again, the ability to have uncomfortable conversations that are very transparent and open and honest in nature. I think it's enabled by this dynamic that you guys have obviously created, which is that I've got your back. I'm on your side. I'm on your team. That enables uncomfortable conversations. Is there an example or two of an uncomfortable conversation you guys have had, say, in the last year that maybe you'd be willing to share?
There might be 500 examples of uncomfortable conversations.
I will say the uncomfortable conversations usually always start with me saying, hey, we've got to talk about this. Most of the time I'm the one that it's eating me up inside. I'm like, hey, there's tension, there's discomfort. Like we've got to have a conversation about this, even though I don't want to, you don't want to.
Yeah, and I just can't believe you don't feel exactly the same way I do at all times.
Yeah, so I'm usually the one that says like, hey, we need to have a talk about this, and then we start the uncomfortable conversation. But yeah, especially we don't need to get into all the details, but just over the last year we've just had a rough year, and that's brought up a lot of uncomfortable conversations when it comes to how we live on a daily basis, how we communicate with each other, how we raise our kids,
Yeah.
how we parent, all those types of things. So,
Well, I think one you brought this up last night. We might as well just, use it as the example. So one of our kids he's had a rough time lately, and he's back home from college, and it wasn't. He had just an absolute rough time, and so we were trying to come up with, hey, like you're home from college, you're not doing what you expected to be doing, you're not doing what we expected you to be doing. You're living from home again. We're going to have some expectations while you figure this life stuff out. And one of the things that we both really wanted for him was to start going to church. And so I built out this contract, and contract is a really harsh word for it, but basically just a list of like, hey, if you're doing this, this is what we want from you. Here's kind of what we expect. We think that this is the best path to get you going towards literally whatever direction you want to go, because it's not our lives. We genuinely just want you to be happy. Like, here's the set of expectations. Here's what we want from you. And so I had on there like, hey, I want you to go to Sun Valley, which is a local church that we go to. And like, I want you to go to this church with us every weekend. But specifically, like, I want you to go to this church. I've gone there since 1997. Karie, our kids used to go there when they were really young. Like, I know the hearts of this church. They're very, anyways, it was important to me. And Carrie's like, I don't think we should make him go to this specific church, just any church. And I was like, I genuinely at the time, the girl friend, we'll put a space between those words, that he was with is her family's practicing Mormon, and so they wanted to go to the LDS church, and I don't have the same experience or feelings with that church to be very nice about it as I do with Sun Valley. And so like I was very adamant, like, absolutely not. I don't want him to just go to any church. Like, I want him to go to this one. And it was a point of contention between us. I think we both went to bed a little angry, and which is fine. You can go to bed angry, people. It's not the end of the world, but you're just going to have terrible dreams. That's just the way it goes. But anyways, that was definitely a point of contention. And, so in the moment, she knew that it was very upsetting to me. I have very strong opinions about absolutely everything. But in the moment, she knew that it was very upsetting to me. She knew that she had a different opinion and a different thought on it, and we needed to have a conversation about it. I think she was pretty wise in waiting to have that conversation, let me cool down a little bit. But what's your take on that?
Yeah, and well, that is exactly what happened, and we did go to bed upset at each other, I think, but mostly because I realized we weren't getting anywhere, and for whatever reason, even though it wasn't my intention, Field even made the comment that he was feeling disrespected in that moment, and like that he was feeling like I was cutting him off and I wasn't listening to him, and in the moment I was thinking like, I definitely am listening to you. I hear what you're saying, and I don't feel like you're hearing what I'm saying. So it was one of those moments where it's like, this conversation is very heated, and we both know that like we love each other and we can have this conversation when we're both in a little better headspace to have it. And so uncomfortable conversations sometimes don't always end in a resolution. They
Not
just
immediate.
no, not
Yeah.
an immediate resolution. They just at least have to start. You have to start them. And they, as long as you can, in that moment when things are starting to get frustrating and upsetting, you can say, like, in a very respectful and loving way, we should put this on, we should side table this for now, and we'll talk about it again
Well,
tomorrow.
and looking back on the situation, what you did that was great was immediately like, I don't get that upset very often anymore. I don't feel like,
No,
right?
you don't.
But I don't get that upset very often anymore. But I was definitely upset, and I wasn't raising my voice, but obviously my tone can change. Um, and so she said, "Why are you so upset?" Like in the moment, we'd kind of had the conversation. There had been some silence for a while, and she said, "Well, why are you upset right now?" And I think I voiced like, "You're cutting me off. You're, what I think it was mostly just like, you're cutting me off.
Mhm.
Like you're interrupting me while I'm trying to speak and voice my very clear and probably slightly unjustified frustrations." Um, but and so then when we had the conversation again, she started off by saying, "I'm really sorry that I was cutting you off. It wasn't my intention. Like, I really wasn't trying to do that." Like,
Mm.
let's to Carrie's credit, like she immediately says, like, "Look, this is how I was taking that conversation." And she said immediately, like, "I'm sorry for doing this." Like, and then that obviously that softens the mean, angry person I can be sometimes. But it's just like, hey, this is mean, maybe not the right word, but angry
Not
person.
me. Yeah.
It's
Just stubborn.
very stubborn, but it softens the blow. Like, hey, I'm really sorry for doing this. And then it immediately makes me feel like she wasn't trying to shut me up or shut me down. She's apologizing. She didn't realize she was doing it. And so it's just like, okay, she wasn't trying to disrespect me and make it seem like my opinion on it wasn't valid or that I was being too harsh. It was literally just she didn't know she was doing it. She felt bad. Let's continue the conversation. And so then we did. We were able to continue the conversation. And I keep using examples where Karie apologizes, and that makes me sound terrible. But then I can immediately apologize and say, like, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get so angry about it. I feel very strongly about this. Like, I have a very strong opinion about this particular issue. And it's not always the case. But then I'm able to be like, I'm sorry that I got upset. But it's always just one of us who takes the initiative and says, hey, this didn't go right. I'm sorry for my portion of it. Like, let's continue this conversation. And then the other person inevitably always apologizes for their portion of it too, which is unbelievably healthy.
Karie, you said something that actually made me emotional thinking about it, but you said, we love each other right now. We're going to go to bed and we can talk about it later. I can only imagine. And the reason it made me emotional is again, having just from personal experience, and I'm going to always try to talk in generic terms because I'm not trying to call anybody out here, but I've certainly had experience in the context of a relationship relationships where I so desperately, just at the end of the day, wanted a good relationship. And Field, to your earlier point, I want to make this person happy. So desperately so. And when a heated moment comes up, I may have a very strong opinion or perspective on that doesn't necessarily line up with the other person's. But at the end of the day, the last thing that I want is conflict. I can only imagine. I don't know if you guys have Karie, if you've actually done this, but like I can only imagine what it would do for a relationship, for a couple in some type of conflict, if the one person was like, "Hey, I love you. It's okay. I just think it would be a good idea right now if we stepped away from this because things like tensions are super high and things are heated and it just doesn't seem like we're going anywhere. I love you. Can we step away from this and come back to it later on?" I know it probably sounds idealistic in nature. I just know, I mean, again, it made me emotional thinking about it because I can only imagine how much that would just take the tension down in the moment. And at the very least, and again, I realize I'm projecting, this is subjective to a point anyway, it takes the sense of fear on my part of what is this going to do to our relationship? Like, not necessarily in a dramatic way, but I just don't want the constant conflict. I don't want problems to arise. I don't want another thing that she can add to the list of frustrations with me. If she says to me, "Hey, look, I love you. I know that we're pissed off right now. We're frustrated right now. I know we don't agree, but this doesn't really seem to be going anywhere. Can we come back to this later on?" Much the same way that Field, you were talking about, if one person apologizes, the other person does, or maybe Karie, you were saying that, but like the same way that softens the conversation. I wonder if that approach would help in the context of conflict. Have y'all done that, or what do you think?
It would probably piss me off.
Yeah. No, it is. First of all, it is very, very hard to do. It's very hard to be aware enough of the conflict that's happening and the emotions that are arising and to not react to them. Because most
Yeah.
people, and obviously this happens in all relationships, but if you can get things under control, your emotions are going to rise up and you're going to either choose to react to them, which literally just fuels the fire. It's putting gasoline on whatever emotion that is. And that's just going to continue until there's there's been moments obviously where that happens in our relationship. And that's when I tend to, get in the car and take a drive, just got to get out of here, go in another room and play the silent treatment or something like that.
I'll show him. I'm going to give him what he wants. I'm going to end the
yeah. So it's just, it is very, very, very hard to do it. But yes, in those moments where you can, even if it's just one of you is able to say like, man, this isn't going anywhere, and in a loving way, like not like, there's going to be times where you're like, you know what, this isn't going anywhere. Like I'm out, I'm leaving. But if we can say like, hey, this isn't going anywhere. I I love you, and I don't want this conversation to continue because it's not helping us right now. So let's talk about it later. Maybe not tomorrow. Let's cool down or whatever. Very hard to do. Yes, we've done it. We've done it honestly more recently, been able to do that than even in years past. We
Mm.
don't really have heated conversations very often, to be honest. But when there is external struggles in a relationship,
Mhm.
especially when it comes to your kids, and you're managing not only your emotions, but what you think is best for your child, what you think is best for your marriage, all of these other aspects come into play. It's very hard to not let emotions get out of control.
For
And,
sure.
and we've just most recently been able to say like, this isn't going anywhere. Let's take a break. It works too with kids sometimes. You can do the same thing,
Mhm.
like, and just say,
Mhm.
like, "I love you, but this conversation, I don't think it's healthy right now. We need to stop." Like, somebody's somebody's anger or, frustration is just getting too high to a point where, then hurtful things are said, mean things happen, and then the cycle just continues if you can't break it with that, "We've gotta come back to this later."
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I do like I'm trying to go through my head and think of times when this has happened. I'm like, we don't do that. Like never. But at the same time, like I remember with the kid that we were having problems with, all of a sudden we started fighting with him, which you never want to fight with your kids. But it was just one of those things where like he had changed and we were trying to fix things and resolve things and try and figure out what was best for him. And Carrie thought it'd be great if we just all sat down and had an uncomfortable conversation where we promised not to get angry. Well, that works until
Until you get angry.
it works until he disrespects my wife, and then we're gonna get in, and then he's gonna remember who his dad is. Like that's just that happens. But at the end of that conversation, that wound up getting overheated. I lost control of my emotions. I got very upset. I was able to still tell him like, "Hey, like I love you, but like this is like I wasn't kind." And then able to afterwards apologize to Carrie for getting upset because she set the expectations that we weren't going to do that. And but so yeah, we do that. I guess I don't necessarily say like, "Hey, I love you. Let's stop talking about it." It's more the conversation has reached a point where neither one of us are going to be able to continue um, without getting uh, angry or really upset into where it's just like, all right, yep, nope, like, I love you. We can talk about this later. Like, I guess that does happen.
Yeah.
It still pissed me off though.
Yeah. Isn't that funny how we like it's almost like we want to fight. You talk about like it would piss you off, Field, like somebody being soft and kind and loving on the other side of us rather than it doesn't always work to soften us. Sometimes it's like we want to fight for fighting's sake, and this person's being nice, and we're like, screw that, I want to fight you.
I just don't need the reminder. I'm angry. I know you love me. Don't tell me you love me and we should talk about it later. Like I know you love me through all of your actions and you tell me every day. Like just be like, just stop the conversation. We can be mad about it and we can regroup in a day. We can regroup tomorrow.
Oh, interesting. Okay, so you were actually being serious. Like you're saying that approach. What does it come off disingenuous in the moment because things are heated, or what's your take?
I think it's more like I don't need that reminder, like I know you love me.
Okay.
Don't, it's not a disingenuous thing. Like we talked about this, I think sometime earlier this week or last week. Like we probably say I love you too much in our household. We probably say it like 40 times a day to our kids and to our, like when our kids are leaving, it's like, all right, yep, see you later, love you tons. Like whatever. We probably say it too much, at least in some people's eyes. But like I don't need that reminder in the moment. If I'm upset, I know it would piss me off if you were like, I love you, let's talk about this later. It's like, I know you love me. Like, that's not the point. The point is the point. Like, the point is the thing that we're fighting about. It probably would hack me off. Not hack me off to where it'd be like, I'd say something about it, but it'd probably add to frustrations, because that's
Okay.
probably more of a shame thing, where it's like, oh,
Mhm.
maybe I'm treating you in an unloving way right now. Like, I know you love me. You don't need to say this. I know that I'm probably being irrational. But yeah, no, it really would hack me off though. And it shouldn't. Let's be very clear about
That's
that.
re-
It
no,
shouldn't.
no, no. But I understand now what you're saying. Yeah, I actually thought you were kind of joking at first, but your point. I better understand your point now. That's an interesting take as well. I guess. I mean, it highlights at the end of the day, and maybe we'll close with this. It highlights the importance of understanding what does work for one person or another. Because here I am literally tearing up listening to Karie talk about, this, at least that ideal scenario where you tell the other person, I love you. And for me, it would probably disarm me pretty quickly. And at the very least, like the idea of going to bed coming right off of conflict. I mean, I don't know how much you were joking or not, Phil, but you're talking about like bad dreams and whatever. I don't know that I would sleep very well after a situation like that.
Yeah.
And so at the very least, it would soften the situation for me, take any sense of fear out of, or at least help minimize that sense of fear associated with that type of conflict, especially if there's been other conflict recently in the relationship, and kind of ease the tension a bit, create a sense of comfort. Maybe I'm just too much of a softie, but it's interesting that your response in that context would be like, what are you talking about? Like, let's talk about what we're talking about. So it's important to note the different people's perspectives, or note the role that I guess different people's perspectives play and how we should be responding to them, and the importance of letting the other person have space to be angry. That's a really interesting, because I think about somebody I was in a relationship with, and I think their kind of approach to conflict like that would be or would have been very similar field to yours, and that yeah, trying to be sweet and kind and soft in the moment probably would have further pissed them off, and just letting them be, letting them have space to have the emotion and then come back around later on, probably the smarter approach.
When you think of like people's love languages, it's like they want to receive love the way that they like it, and I think it's the same thing with, conflict or arguments. We want that resolution to be there, in the way that we would want it most. So, um,
That's actually really good. But like the next morning I could wake up and be like, we have bunnies, I'm not gonna feed the bunnies this morning. I'm not gonna feed the dog. Like, Karie can get up and do that. Haha. Like, I could take that mentality, or the next morning I could wake up and say, like, even after a fight, and be like, you know what, like, I'm gonna go do these things. Like, I'm gonna wake up and intentionally choose to do something for my wife. Like, she gets to stay in bed an extra 20 minutes. I'll feed the bunnies. I'll feed the dog. Like, I'll make sure all this stuff is taken care of. One, it's because I know that she loves acts of service, like little things like that. Not to soften her up or anything, but genuinely because I love her and I want her to feel loved. Like, even though I'm hacked off about the conversation the night before, I can still wake up and choose to do the loving, caring things for my wife. And just because it's like, oh no, I'm still mad. Like, in the morning, I know that I spent the whole night intentionally not touching her and keeping a barrier between us, and turned the other way, and probably breathing real deeply. Like, I know what I did the night before. Like, I know what I did. Like, but I'm still gonna wake up and be like, I'm gonna do these things for her so she can stay in bed an extra 20 minutes and whatever. And then also it allows me to just get up and get out, get away for a second, even though I'm 15 feet away in the kitchen, like, and just like breathing and thinking about like how I'm going to react that day and what I'm going to choose. Am I going to choose to still be angry about this situation that, in reality, she's a kind, loving person. She just has a slightly different opinion on something than I do? Or I'm going to choose to say, like, hey, we're going to talk through this. We'll be fine. Like, once again, like, I don't want to hear the I love you part, because that's never in question for me. Like, I don't need that reminder. Like, I know it's there. So, or I'm just going to do these nice things for my wife because she's my wife. I'll probably make her an egg in the morning. Like, really hack her off. Let me show you how much I love you. I'm going to feed you.
Yeah, I think ultimately what it comes down to in a successful relationship is when you have struggle, when you have conflict, you can either choose to try to understand why somebody is wired the way they are and what they need to make the relationship better, or you can continue to feed into what only you need in a relationship and what works for you. And that is how I think successful relationships really grow and mature over time is that act of how can I make our relationship better? How can I understand this person better? And that's ultimately what creates a successful, loving relationship.
Beautifully summed up. And once again, I want to thank you not only for sharing, but like truly being open and vulnerable, and so many nuggets to take away from the conversation today. Thank you everybody for listening in as well. If you're not subscribed yet, whatever platform you might be on, make sure to subscribe and comment your thoughts on today's conversation. What are your experiences? What questions might you have? I'm going to have a therapist or therapists on the show in future episodes to get kind of the professional opinion on some of these topics as well. So do you have a question as it relates to some of what we've talked about today for a therapist? Put those in the comments. Would love to hear from you what your thoughts are about the show. Thanks again, Field and Karie, for making time today.
Thank you so much for having us. Great seeing you again.